Morning, guys. Welcome to day 2. We are in Unit 4, Week 5. We are focusing on research question number 4 this week, which is how is our job different in different places. Yesterday, we filled out our first FPO. Today, we're going to be working on our second FPO. And yesterday I tried to use examples from a lot of different jobs. Today I'm going to use one specific job. I'm going to use construction workers to help us work through our second FPO. So I want you guys to follow along with me. I'm going to read you a story. It's called Hooray for Construction Workers. And while I'm reading, I want you to think about these things. What is the author saying about research question number 4? How do you know? And why does it matter to our study of jobs? So I used Epic to find this book. This is one of the resources you can use to do your research questions and help you to figure out your opinion and help you to fill out and complete your FPOs. So builders, construction workers have many different jobs. They work together to build things. Workers build the roads we drive on. They make the buildings we live in. What else do you think construction workers build? Some workers make things out of wood. They use saws and drills. They make walls and cabinets. Other workers build with metal. They weld steel. Steel holds up tall buildings in cities. So this would be an urban community. Plumbers add pipes. Pipes move water. This plumber uses a wrench to connect pipes. Other workers work with electricity. They put wires into buildings. Wires connect lights to electricity. What else do you think needs electricity in buildings? Workers often work outside. They work in the heat. They even work in the snow. Workers wear helmets and gloves. These keep workers safe. They also wear tool belts. Tool belts carry workers' supplies. Why do construction workers wear tool belts? Construction workers also take down old buildings. They help our community. All right, so let's look back at what we were thinking about. What is the author saying about research question number 4? How do we know? Why does it matter to our study of jobs? Well, we are going to use this FPO to help us answer these questions, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and complete this with you guys so that we can kind of work together on this and you guys can see how I would fill this out for my job of being a construction worker. And some of you, this might be very helpful because maybe you're studying being a construction worker. So let's look at the first one. And really, we're going to just compare 2 regions. You can choose which 2 you want to do. I chose to compare an urban and a rural area because to me, those are 2 areas that are very different, okay? So when I think about construction workers, the first thing it says, groups of people who do this job. Well, we saw in our book that there were men and women who did this job. So it said men or women. And it asked specifically about their gender, their race, their age. And we saw that it didn't matter what race, so any race and any age. There were young construction workers and older construction workers. So there's not necessarily a requirement on any of these things. Now let's think about if I was in the rural community, the same things would apply. You could have men or women, still any race or any age. So those 2 things don't really change too much between the 2 communities. Now let's look at the working conditions. So that means their salary, their workplace, their rights, their regulations, their safety. So let's think about what we see in our book that talked about safety. And I think a lot of these will be very similar for both of them also because you would want to be able to stay safe no matter what. So I saw safety hats. We saw different kinds of gloves that they may use. I saw the welder was wearing a mask to protect his face and his eyes, depending on which particular type of construction you're wanting to study. And they work in all weather. I think that they pretty much are the same in the rural areas. You're still going to need safety hats, you're still going to need gloves, masks for welders, and work in all weather. The only thing that I think might be different is think about in the city. It said that they had to work on tall buildings. They probably need some kind of safety gear to help them when they're up on that tall building. So I would put something about safety gear to work on tall buildings that are in the city, right? And they'd probably also need stuff to help maybe block off roads, different things like that. Because in a city, they're going to be a lot busier. So there's a lot of stuff that they're going to want to make sure that nobody is underneath them or in their way so nobody else gets hurt. So we'll just say block off traffic. Now, I think these are pretty much the same things that we would have over here. Only thing I think might be different would be typically in rural communities, you're not really building a lot of skyscrapers or super tall buildings. So that might be the only difference I'm seeing there. So we would still need safety hats for building. You're still going to want gloves. We need welders still, even in the rural community. And in rural community, they're still going to work in all weather. It doesn't matter if it's cold or hot. Now, the thing I said might be different is the safety gear to work on tall buildings, and there's not going to be as much traffic, so maybe they don't need all of the stuff that they're going to need to make sure that they keep other people safe. Now let's look at the difference between the rural and urban communities right here. We have the next area is called equipment and transportation and other technology. So let's think about what we read about in that book. It talked about how they work on tall buildings in cities. In order to get to these tall buildings and to get this equipment, they're going to need special machines. So cranes is one of them. We also read that they use metal or steel to build those tall buildings because they need something very strong to go that high. Wood would not be strong enough to hold those tall buildings. And I would think that they would need more technology because they're going to be working on building such tall buildings, and that might require a little bit more technology and engineering to make sure that these buildings are safe for people. Whereas in rural communities, equipment and transportation, I think that maybe they would still need cranes, right? Possibly. They might not have anything super tall, but maybe they might use them for their barns or something. They're not necessarily going to need as much technology, or they're actually not going to have as much access to technology. And they won't be building super tall buildings, so they might not need the steel either. Now I'm going to think about, so I'll go ahead and put wood here because typically they'll probably be using a lot of wood to build things. And they will have smaller buildings, so they won't really necessarily need to use the steel and maybe not the crane. We'll leave that on there just in case. All right, let's look at the bottom part. It says other aspects to consider. So something else I might consider is the money. That's going to be very different. So there is more money and more job opportunities for construction workers in urban areas. Whereas over here in the rural area, there's not going to be as much for them to be able to do. So less money and less job opportunities because they're not going to be building as much. There's not as many people. All right, so So that is how I would fill out this FPO for being a construction worker. This is going to really require you to think a lot. You're not going to be able to just read it straight from the book and get all of your answers. You're probably going to have to reference a couple of different books. Maybe you want to look at Epic, maybe you're on ARC Bookshelf, maybe you will even go to the internet and do a search to find more information on the differences in jobs in the rural and urban and suburban communities. All right, I wanted to go ahead and stop for today. We will start up tomorrow on day 3, and I will see you guys later.